Hi, everyone. I'm James Protin. I'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for the podcast, Candelore's Barking Beauties, with 5 locations throughout the region, and His Place Coffee Community and more here in Menneson for hosting us.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Candelore, owner of Candelore's Barking Beauties, where our salon is your salon. We have 5 convenient locations, no appointment needed. All breeds welcome. Any size dog. We are open Tuesday through Saturday from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. We have 5 convenient locations: Elizabeth, White Oak, Finleyville, Monongahela, and Irwin. Love to have you visit us.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone, the James Protin Podcast. I'm James Protin. I'm your host. And when I think of our guest today, there's 2 things that really jump into my mind. One is servant leadership. The other is entrepreneurship. And this young lady has traveled a life journey that has taken the path kind of less traveled, I would say. So she is a servant leader. She's been an actress, she's been a model, she's an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur. All the while, she's been raising 2 very successful children who are now very successful adults. And, by the way, she is a sitting state senator here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So my guest, Camera Bartolotta. Welcome, Camera. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. I'm glad we could finally do this. It's been a journey.
We've talked about it for a while, and I'm glad you fit us into your schedule. I know you had something pretty important going on today, and as you always do. And so I'm very curious. We've known each other for a good while now, and I know a little bit about your background. There are some things that I don't know. I was just telling our studio audience here, who, by the way, Jack's our studio audience. It has a name. So
settle down there. It's getting rowdy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So well, the applause sign isn't working. So if he doesn't clap at the appropriate time.
I saw him doing the wave a minute ago. Great.
Don't be offended. But you're not a native Pennsylvanian. Your journey started out on the West Coast, and that's honestly my second favorite state. And people would be surprised to hear that because my family is all in California. My sister and her family and my parents have been out there since 1981. So they had the opposite migration from you. So you And tell us a little bit about young Camera, early Camera in California.
Okay. Well, I was born in a tiny little town in Oregon.
Really?
Yes, Cottage Grove, Oregon, about the size of a parking lot, typical, and very, very tiny, to a mom who was 18. My sister was 2 at the time, and my dad was 20. So we had teenage parents, really.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And the first roof over my head was in a floating shack in a logging company in Alaska. So born in Cottage Grove, immediately went to my dad's logging company where he was a logger.
Amazing.
He was a tree topper, and they called him Stretch. He was 6'4". You call him anything he wants you to call him.
Sure, absolutely.
So, but it was not long after that my mom basically said, this isn't going to work for 2 children under the age of 2 floating down a river at a logging company in Alaska. So we're out. And they moved to Las Vegas. And at the time it was booming because it was really coming into its own. Mm-hmm. All these newer casinos were being, I'm old. I was born in December of 63. So yeah, December at Alaska. You put it together.
You're pretty young compared to me. So that's good. You're actually not the oldest person in this room. So.
Well, there we go then. I get a cookie. Excellent. But it went to Las Vegas where there were jobs, and my mom took on 3 jobs because at the age of 20, my dad left. So she was a single mom with 2 little girls under 4 and 2. And so she worked 3 jobs, and one was a waitress in a casino, and she was a hotel maid in the same casino. And then in her spare time, she collected Coke bottles that people had thrown out their car windows on the desert highway,
spare time. Yeah.
and redeemed for money. And so then she moved her mom in with us, Graham. And until I think it was in high school, I thought her real name was Graham. Because that's what everyone called her. Everyone, all of her friends, that was her name. But thank goodness for her, because then, my mom was able to work constantly nonstop and put food on the table. So I learned at a very young age, there is no such thing as women's work or men's work. It was just work.
It's work.
Just work.
I agree completely.
Yeah. Started working at 14 because I'm 5'7". I was this tall at 11 years old, and getting getting hand-me-downs from my older sister, who was 5'4".
Oh, jeez.
Didn't work out that well.
No, that's not
So
good.
I got a job so I could pretty much pay for whatever I needed to pay for if I could, and, never stopped. And managed to graduate high school at 16. I graduated a semester early because I knew how important education was.
Right.
I saw my mom, who hadn't even made it through 10th grade of high school, knowing that education is such an incredibly vital part of anyone's life. You don't get anywhere unless you get an education and use it.
Right.
So, went to college, graduated with 2 degrees, even though
Where'd you go to college?
I went to St. Mary's College. I think they're they might be in the Sweet 16 right
I
now.
think they won. Yeah, they won. I don't know if it's Sweet 16.
The Galloping Gales.
But yeah,
The
they
Galloping Gales.
won. There's been some serious upsets in the,
I
already.
know. Well, they beat Gonzaga once and then they lost the second time. So anyway,
Yeah.
but that's the Galloping Gales. Teeny weeny tiny little, parochial
Yeah,
school
absolutely.
across the bay from San Francisco, and yeah.
And then you made your way to Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I grew up in Southern California, so not long after, we were only in Vegas for a very short time. I think until I was maybe 3 or 4, and then moved to Southern California because my mom was an actor and a model, and she, had some national commercials and things like that. So she was sort of involved in that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's fascinating. And so you met your late husband and made your way back to here to Pennsylvania, the center of the universe. And I would venture a guess that being a senator in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania never entered your mind in Southern California.
It didn't enter my mind when I lived in Pennsylvania until 2011 when I was approached to run. Yeah, but yes, I escaped LA in 1986 and moved to Southern California, Southern Pennsylvania from Southern California.
Okay,
I like to say
okay.
went from one valley to the next.
Sure, yeah.
From oh my god
Yeah.
to oh my god. But it's been phenomenal. I had never been in a place where people were so genuine and real. And I always tease people. I know it sounds hokey and corny, but I use this analogy, and it's very, very accurate to me. You've seen The Wizard of Oz.
Sure.
Where it's all in black and white until she gets to Oz, and she opens the door, and it's all Technicolor, and wow.
Sure.
Growing up in Southern California, living on a dead-end street as a little kid for 7 years, and you knew 3 neighbors, only because they had kids your age.
Right.
And nobody talks to each other. There's walls and fences, and nobody speaks, and
True
everyone's
story, yeah.
transient. And
Yep.
But moving to Monongahela, Pennsylvania, where people would say, "How are you?" and they would
Right.
wait for an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're sincere.
Absolutely.
It's not, they really, truly want to know how you are.
And everybody went to school with everybody, and everybody knows your grandfather, your grandmother, your aunt, your uncle, and everybody's around. It just
absolutely.
was such an incredible, enriching life experience.
It's an amazing place. And whenever somebody would come in from the Southwest, in particular, Texas, Arizona, Southern California, and they come here, whether it's for work or family, the first thing that hits them, every single one says the same thing. They can't believe how green it is here. Yes. It is, and that's, we certainly have our issues with our winter and our gray, but this is a beautiful place.
It's phenomenal. It really is spectacular. And just every type of environment you can picture, it's right here. I mean, the mountains and the valleys and the rivers and it's truly a spectacular, gorgeous place to live.
Absolutely. And you have, and I didn't realize this, because I probably was going to your shop to get my oil changed for, I can't tell you how long, before I even found out that you had mentioned to me in passing one day that was you owned it, the Quick Lube, and I didn't even know that.
The Duke of Oil.
Duke of Oil.
Duke of Oil. Yeah, you'll be humming that all day. You're welcome.
Yeah. You'll never get rid of that. But so how did you, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial dream. Did you always have kind of like that
No, not really. I mean,
spark
I was
or whatever?
Well, I mean, in high school, my thinking of what I would do when I graduated high school was to be a director or producer in the film industry, because you're just immersed in it in Southern California. It's part of everyday.
It's everything.
It's everything everywhere, and I really enjoyed that. Being able to tell a story, and and this is something people are starting to understand too about actors or comedians or any of those people. You get to pretend to be somebody you're not, and a lot of them do it for a reason. I mean, I grew up in a very abusive family, and a lot of issues and things like that. My sister ran away when she was 16, and my mom was committed a couple of times, and the whole thing. So people who go into acting typically do it so they can pretend to be someone they're not, and to sort of project other aspects that are a little tough. So it was just a very interesting aspect for me. And I studied psychology and business in college, and trust me, the psychology degree comes in a lot more handy in politics than you would ever imagine.
Yes, it does.
It was just getting through college as quickly as I could, and wanting to get on with life. So,
did that childhood experience, that upbringing, is that what led you, do you think, to psychology?
Absolutely. Oh, without a doubt. Yes. Physician, heal thyself. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I think because of that, I was much, much more patient and understanding of the issues that my mom had, the demons that she suffered, because she was brutally raped when I was 6 years old, and she was on a trip with a friend. So, and I'm saying these things just not just for enlightening people as to, a senator has these issues. Everybody has a story. Every single person on this planet has a story. And I think having some of these experiences, broad experiences, poverty, abuse, these sorts of things, it gives me the opportunity to be a voice.
Absolutely.
For a lot of these different groups. And not to mention the fact that when I was driving home from college my freshman year, I had just turned 18. I rolled my car like 4 or 5 times, got shot out the windshield, spent 9 hours of surgery, 3 weeks in the hospital, and almost a year in a wheelchair. And this was before ADA anything. So
I have to tell you, I knew you had an interesting story, but I'm hearing a lot of things that I didn't know, and I agree with you completely. And that's really what the premise of this is all about, right? Is telling those stories, because it doesn't do you or anybody any good to keep it in here, and it's actually cathartic, when I write my blog, right, and when we started doing this, we do it for one person, right? And I know you get that, right? Because I don't care if 1 million people watch this or one person, as long as it's that one person that needs to hear your message and your story, right? So you have overcome, now the Bartolotta name in this part of the world has a lot, everybody knows it. It's very well recognized, and it has a meaning that goes to it, right? Because, Aldo is very successful in business. He's almost
salt of the earth.
One of the nicest men you'll ever want to meet in your life. But that name is associated, because of where we are, with wealth, right? But you didn't come from wealth, okay? You did not come from that. You came from a very difficult place. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. No,
and you know what? And let me clear that up too. Owning supermarkets, I mean, literally the return on that is about 2%.
Exactly, it's perception, right?
It's just, Aldo, who, I mean, ever since I met him, I said he walked on water. God bless him. God rest his soul.
Most one of the nicest men I ever met. Absolutely.
Truly an angel among us. He affected so many hundreds of lives. I mean, he would hire people, and he would mentor them, and he would, just appreciate them, because he came from nothing. I mean, he and his giant family lived in a 4-room, not a 4-bedroom, a 4-room house on Park Avenue.
Exactly.
And they had no idea they were poor.
You're exactly right.
But
You're
it's
exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah.
They were neighbors of my in-laws
Oh,
down on Park
right.
Avenue.
See?
Yeah, so.
One extraordinary street.
Oh my goodness! It was, well, we've heard the story. Joe Montana learned how to play football in my in-laws' backyard because he lived on the steep side of Park Avenue and they lived on the creek side. It's
A lot of great people
It's a whole
because
thing, but
they're
yeah, it's
raised by good families.
well, you're exactly right. And when you look at I was born and raised in Charleroy, right up the river, right? So Charleroy, Monongahela, Denora, Monessen. I'm old, and I'm old enough to remember what they were, right? When there were 24,000 people in this city, and 12 in Charleroy, and 15 in Denora. This was it was a mini Pittsburgh here, right? But and people like Aldo are the people that built this place, okay? And you and I, we came along, and I think when I hear what you say in Harrisburg, when I see, and I pay attention because, I'm here. I try to stay involved in the community. I try to keep, although I'm nowhere near political, but I'm an advocate. I try to be for the community. And you are one of the elected officials that I can say that is doing it for the right reason, right? And I didn't always support that. I didn't know what you were going to do. If when you first time you ran, I was like, I don't know what's, but I'll tell you, you have not only earned my respect, but my vote, and that's the key, right? That's the important thing. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting here or because we're friends. I think that you are doing it the right way for the right reasons, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And in today's political climate, that means more to me than you could ever imagine. With the vitriol and the nastiness and just the poison pens and the razor tongues that are out there all over the place, it's us or them, us or them. And if you don't agree with me 1,000%, to heck with you.
Exactly
you're
right.
the enemy. And that is not how anyone should go through life, much less govern.
Well, in the very things that certain groups are using to divide us are the very things that should be uniting us. Yes. We're all different, right? And we've been different, we've had our differences, but those differences should be celebrated. But now we're using them, they've been weaponized. Right, and so we're probably, and I'm interested in how you feel about this, but I think now that we are as divided and this is as chaotic as I can remember it being in my lifetime. And I'm old enough to remember the 60s. I'm a child of the 60s, right? So 68, 69, I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and so I have vivid memories of the riots in Detroit and all these things that went on, and I think it's worse now. I think we've regressed.
Well, I think the culprit, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, is it's a 24-hour news cycle.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Social media is toxic.
Yes.
And one of the saving graces that I heard not too long ago is that, look at Twitter. Maybe 2% of Americans even have a Twitter account.
Right.
And about 1% of them actually tweet anything.
Right.
So you're looking at this barrage of these, far right, far left, just vitriolic.
That's exactly what it is.
Oh, look, I'm trending. Yeah, but for all the wrong reasons. People slow down at a traffic accident too.
Exactly
don't
right.
brag about it.
That's exactly right.
So, and unfortunately, too many people are hearing these extremes of ideology
and we've pushed
on either side.
So far to the poles, right,
Yes.
to the ends.
Yes.
There's no place for somebody in the middle.
Well, and I heard a good phrase today, and I'm going to use it a lot: the radical middle. It's radical.
That's me.
To be
That's
a
where I
moderate
am.
anymore.
It is, and
Yeah.
it's a lonely place.
But
It
you know
really
what?
is.
I think it's because it has a quieter voice.
We're not shouting as loud. That's
yes,
exactly
we're not
right.
screaming
I agree.
and
I
just
agree.
making idiotic remarks that
Mm-hmm.
draw attention. So this radical middle is the majority of Americans, the majority of
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvanians, Ohioans, anyone The middle is where most people live. And that's where we should focus our energy. But unfortunately, here's another thing that I learned as a senator, and this happened several years ago, and this particular senator has since, gone on to other things. He didn't run again. But I was so frustrated by a bill that I had that was just, it made so much sense. It was going to literally save lives. Tyranny's law. We won't even go into all that. People can look that up.
I'm familiar, sure.
Okay, it was about domestic violence law. It was stuck over in the House, and I thought, what in the world? Why are they not doing this? And there were other bills that were, along those lines too. But one other bill this person was giving an example for, he says, okay, here's what I want you to think of. Okay, in the Senate, I represent about 273,000 people. In the House, it's about between 63,000. Okay, he says, let's just round it off, 6,000 people. He says, okay, if you're a House member and you represent 6,000 people, let's just pretend for a minute only 50% of these people even go out to vote.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So who do you have to please? Out of 60,000,
Right.
no, 10%, so it's only 10%. So you get maybe
It's
6,000. 6,000 people go to vote.
You're exactly right.
Who do you have to please? 3,001.
That's exactly right.
Out of 60,000 people. I'm like, oh, that is soul crushing.
It is, and it's frustrating that the most important thing, I was raised by a teacher, right? History, social studies teacher. So I've had this stuff.
You mean when they used to teach it?
When they used to teach it, yeah. So, but I the way I grew up was that the most important thing you could do, your civic duty, the most important thing that an American can do, short of serving in the military, is voting, right? Being an educated voter.
That's the most important.
That's the most important, because anybody can go check a box on a ballot, right? Okay, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm going to check the red, I'm going to check the blue. But to actually talk to people and to listen to what people like you have to say, people who are on a ballot, okay? That takes effort and it takes commitment.
Yes. And people don't have patience for that anymore for some reason.
Right.
And they just want to be, well, not everybody. Life is so complicated right now, and it is moving at such a fast pace. They're just like, just tell me who to vote for. Well, take a minute. Take a couple of minutes, and don't click on one cable news station or another one and just get spoon-fed, because it's not all true.
That's exactly right.
Go to different sources. If it's an elected official who's been in office go to their record. It's there. It's public knowledge. It's public information.
Yes.
Call them.
Right.
Call them up. When I ran the first time, I had little cards that I handed out to everyone. It had my personal cell phone number on it. Mm-hmm. And I gave it to 9,000 doors I knocked on, myself personally, plus every festival fair, everything else, fire hall, anything I could go to, my personal cell phone number. And I would tell people that at the door. I said, this is my cell phone number. If you have a question, please
call.
Oh, that's not your... Oh, yes, it is. And it still is. So if you got one laying around, that's still my number. Call me up. But I only got 2 people who called to call me.
Really?
One person who really had a question, and I was thrilled to death. I'm like, let's talk. We spent 20 minutes on the phone. I thought it was great. And the other one, oh my gosh, I
really
just wanted to know if it was her number. I'm like, well, it is. What do you want to know, Jim? Oh, nothing. I'm like, well, if you think of something, give me a call back.
Call back, yeah. Oh,
Nobody
wow.
can believe that, but you have to be accessible. Ask people. Demand information from people that you're going to represent you. Make sure they're representing you and not special interests. And that's what I do as a state senator. Mm-hmm. I go to the source. And you know what? I love lobbyists. They're great. They're very helpful.
They serve a purpose. Absolutely.
They absolutely do, because they hone in on an issue and they explain things. You can get lots of statistics from them and all that. Yep. But if it's something like, special needs children, adult changing tables, or something like that, I look for the advocate. Sure. I look for the people who it's actually affecting. I have people who have become dear friends of mine who are with Triple, and they service adults with disabilities.
Right.
I've had them in my offices before, and and I listen to them. They're the ones experiencing it.
Right.
You're
exactly right.
Well, I spent almost a year in a wheelchair. I get it. It's not easy. Right. So, different life experiences that people have had.
Sure. And I think that a lot of that life experience we were talking about that before you got here, there's really no separation between business and personal anymore, right? Because all business is personal, right? So it's all about relationships. But and I will tell you this, I go to Harrisburg a lot when I go out, and I've met with you out in your office. I've been out there and just popped in to say hello to people that I know, or as a constituent. I have never not had someone not take at least a minute to say hello, how are you? Right? I've popped into your office. When you were there, we've talked for a few minutes. And, I know how busy you guys are when you're out there in that building, right? And by the way, let's for a moment talk about how cool that building is. That is, I've been in a lot of state houses. That is absolutely head and shoulders the best.
Well, I mean, even Theodore Roosevelt, I think it was, who quoted saying it. It is the handsomest.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Capitol building in the country.
And anyone who has not been there, it's worth a trip to Harrisburg to take the tour because it's spectacular.
I actually, I do a cable show from my office.
Sure.
Often, not really through COVID. I think everybody took a pause there. But one of my favorite shows that we did was a behind-the-scenes tour of the Capitol building. Yeah. And we did went to the Supreme Court building, which was gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
The Senate floor, talked about Violet Oakley. She was a woman who painted all of these beautiful murals and stuff. She wasn't allowed.
The Senate chamber is spectacular.
Oh, it is. It is. Well, she wasn't allowed. She wasn't allowed on the Senate floor.
Really?
Because as a woman, you weren't allowed to go in the room. So she had men bring her beautiful art pieces and hang them. Anyway, that's a long story. But the cable show that I did, and you can find it on my website, senatorbartolotta.com, look for videos and things. I did a behind-the-scenes tour of the Capitol. The tiny, tiny, tiny little dome way at the top of the building where the statue is standing.
Sure.
It's this itty-bitty little dome, like smaller than this room, I think. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a balcony around the outside of it. And to get to it, you have to climb a steel ladder that's literally in between the two domes underneath it. So I put a GoPro on my head. And I'm climbing up in there, and I get to the top thing, and I'm like, this is amazing. Yeah. And I'm a private pilot, so heights don't really scare me. But Colleen, who works for me, is terrified of heights.
Oh, jeez.
I didn't know that. So she was up there with me. She's like, so I asked the guide who was with us, I said, I heard tell that you could actually go into some little hatch thing and like touch the little bronze statue. Isn't there can we get a little higher? He's like, well, yeah, I guess. I said, well, let's go. He's like, no, Senator, we can't do that. No. I'm like, come on. He goes, no, it's really windy. And I look at Colleen, and she has this trench coat on with a belt. And I'm like, I could tie myself off. He's like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, darn.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a thrill seeker. So
good. That's a
but
good
it's
thing.
an awesome video if you want to really see behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I would recommend everybody take a look at it, because how would they find your?
Just senatorbartolotta.com, and then go onto my website and go to media videos or whatever and just hunt for it. We've got tons of videos, and it's called Focus on the 46, and we celebrate everything that's awesome about the 46th district.
And
there's
a lot to celebrate. You have one of the
much.
coolest districts in the entire Commonwealth. You really do. And I'm a little bit biased because, I'm a local fella, but this is a beautiful part of the world, let alone the state.
Well, there's so much here too, because we power Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
We actually are Marcellus Central, coal,
I'm glad you said
gas,
that,
oil.
because that's where I was going next.
Okay.
And by the way, before I forget, a mutual friend of ours, Rich Bohr, said to tell you hello. He texted me this morning. He texts me every morning early, and he said, when are you doing the show with Cam? And I said, today. He said, and he gave me 47 things to say and questions. But so we'll save that for another episode. But he did say to tell you hello. He's a great guy and one of the most knowledgeable guys about Marcellus and all things energy. And I know you and I share probably the same kind of perspective on energy. But let's talk about that a little bit, because it is an important topic, not only for Pennsylvania, but for the entire world, right? And how it applies to not only our economy, but our national security. And that's a part of natural gas and energy as a whole that the average person doesn't really think about.
Right. It's phenomenal. And I just had an energy roundtable this morning. I've been on energy panels many, many, many times. When I first started in the Senate, I requested to be the vice chair of energy and environmental resources for the very reason of where the district is.
Right.
I have all of Greene County. I have Washington County. I have parts of Beaver County just below the cracker plant. So it is all energy all the time.
Yes.
And it is mind-boggling to me that on two levels, on the federal level with Joe Biden and on the state level with Tom Wolf, that we're not seizing this opportunity to utilize the assets that we have right here in Pennsylvania, right in Washington County, right under our feet. Pennsylvania is the number one in the number of gas wells. We're number two in the production of natural gas. And we could crank that up 400%.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
if we just were allowed to get politics out of the way, we should be providing places like Ukraine and all these other countries the natural gas that they need to fuel their economy, and they would not be beholden to places like Russia. We're still buying oil from Russia.
Exactly, and natural gas,
And gas, yes.
And I may misspeak here, but I read recently, and I believe it was the Jones Act, the federal act, but we cannot put gas on a tanker in the port of Houston and take it off the tanker in the port of Boston, in Boston Harbor, right? But yet we can import gas and oil from Russia.
And South America. Most of it's coming from South America right now, right?
It's ludicrous. And not only that Russian oil and gas is twice the cost of the domestic, and we still.
And it's our job. Well, I mean, I have a pin on right now.
It's
it
crazy.
says American energy, American jobs, and that's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what
and
it is.
And it's homeland security, it is energy independence, and it would be global security for places like Ukraine. And we are sitting here still fueling, literally, financially, Russia, because and now Joe Biden wants us to buy our oil from Venezuela, who actually funds Russia. It's absurdity.
It is, and aside from
Iran
that,
and yes.
When you think about the environmental side of it, okay, look at it from the environmental perspective, right? We have more regulations and environmental safeguards than any country on earth. Nobody does this as cleanly and safely as we do, and most of the climate change issues that we have, which I believe is real. Don't get me wrong, climate change is a real thing, but at the end of the day, the Russian oil and gas production, South American, that is contributing more to those issues than anything we would do. We would actually be helping the environment if we would ramp up our production of natural gas.
As a matter of fact, it's even more so than that, because if you take a look at what's happening now with the technology when it comes to natural gas, in Pennsylvania in particular, we are going to possibly be, and I've met with Toby Rice now 4 times in the last month, and he's the guru of all things, all things gas, pretty much.
He's amazing.
He's incredible. Amazing. Yes, and Dave Callahan, who is the head
Dave's
of the Marcellus Shale Coalition.
Good friend. He's a great guy.
When we take a look at the natural gas in Pennsylvania over the last 10 years, because we've switched more to natural gas than the reliance on coal, just in this state alone, we have reduced the carbon emissions in Pennsylvania by 34%.
Exactly. Yep.
And with the technology coming onto the forefront, possibly by 2024, maybe 25, we could be looking at natural gas energy production with 0 carbon emissions.
Yep.
Zero. And what this means is we will not need to rely on any kind of coal production. We should be much more worried about international coal use. China is burning coal like it's literally going out of style.
You're exactly right.
They have no regulations. They don't give a crap about the environment. And if we were, when we rely on natural gas, literally it's like having every single solitary person in the entire country using an electric car and relying on nothing but wind and solar, having every single roof in America covered with solar panels all at the same time. That's how environmentally helpful natural gas is.
Absolutely.
And we have to get the message out.
We do, and it's not, natural gas is not the problem. It is the path to the solution for the problem, right? It's not the solution in itself, but it is the path to the solution. And I think that, again, I got involved early on in the industry, and I don't know if you know this, but I was actually an oil and gas practice leader for Marcellus back in the day, and when it first started. And I knew nothing about it, but I had a network, and I knew people, and I was in the industry, so they said, here, you do this. And it was at AECOM, right? So I had to educate myself. And But at the end of the day, we cannot even create or develop any other alternative energy sources without natural gas. I'm sorry, Nick. Without natural gas, right? So, I mean, that's the key to all of it. We will never be able to be completely away from fossil fuels. It's not possible.
Not for quite some time. And the thing that people really need to understand also is that when you rely on only solar and wind, okay, well, that's Chinese energy production that we're talking about, because we're not producing those things. We're not producing solar panels,
Right.
In mass quantities in America. They're being produced in China.
Being
So we're
imported, absolutely.
funding our demise. We are
Yes.
sending our money to produce these things in China and not in America. And the other thing too is when you take a look at it, there's like 2,500 acres of pristine farmland that is now being discussed to purchase and put nothing but a giant solar farm on.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, if you ate today, thank a farmer. Agriculture is the number one
absolutely right.
industry in Pennsylvania right
exactly
now.
right.
Number one. And if you put solar panels all over 2,500 acres, you're not going to get
crazy.
as much energy from that as you would 1 5-square-acre gas pad.
That's exactly right.
And you can still farm around it.
And you can still farm around it. That's 100%
Yeah,
correct. And
it's got to be an all of the above strategy. I mean, I'm for wind, for solar,
Absolutely.
for nuclear,
Absolutely.
gas, oil, coal, because now CONSOL is now looking at having a facility, an energy producing facility in Greene County, hopefully. And what it will do is burn waste coal and biomass like switchgrass.
Sure, yep,
And
yep.
producing a net negative energy, net negative carbon
Yep.
producing energy.
That's awesome.
Let's look at research and development using technology to use what we have in abundance in a much cleaner, safer way.
Absolutely. I think, and we got behind the curve early on, right, with that F word, fracking, right? And that's one of those things that inspires that passion in people, right? Especially the people that don't understand what it is, and I think the fact that we let that get out too far ahead and then we were playing catch up.
As far as what?
As far as
safety,
the messaging,
cleanliness?
not
I see
that,
what you mean.
because
Oh,
that's
yeah.
always
Yeah.
we've always had that.
Yeah.
It has always been the safest and the cleanest, But the messaging, we got so far behind in the messaging, and just like the MSC, for example, they conduct their business probably as professionally as well as anybody in that type of field. They're phenomenal, right? But they've been playing catch up with that message from almost day one.
Exactly. Well, and again, too, a lot of misinformation has gotten out there. And I was just, again, on this energy panel this morning, and Josh Kale, who's a representative from the Beaver County area, he was talking about how there are now going to be investigations into misinformation, Russian misinformation regarding our energy
It's amazing.
platform.
Right.
And saying, oh no, it's gas, no, it's bad, it's horrible, it's bad. Oh, and
Right.
it's just corporate greed. Meanwhile, take a look at Russia. Okay,
Absolutely.
they want us to buy oil from them, and
Right.
they're killing people.
Exactly.
And they have very few regulations when it comes to air, water quality, any of that stuff. So when we stop doing what we're doing responsibly, cleanly, and technologically advanced, we're relying on places like China to
Right.
do far, far worse to the environment, the human suffering
to
that's
humanity.
involved. Yes.
Exactly. You're exactly
it doesn't
right.
make sense. So
You're exactly right. I just think that it's a tragedy that we have allowed politics to have so much power over the industry, right? But something I learned too about the natural gas industry is that oil and gas industry, we have a deep connection here in the valley with that. In the mid-1930s, Allenport, I think it was Pittsburgh still up in Allenport, patented the coupling process that allowed the industry to drill to the depths, not horizontal, but to drill to the deeper depths. Okay, that was patented and produced up in Allenport at the Pittsburgh Steel Plant, right? So this is not something that we just jumped on board at the end of the day. I mean, in industry, manufacturing, it's in our blood. It's who we are.
much, yeah. Well, and you talked about manufacturing. And one of the things that we absolutely have to do to turn our economy around in Pennsylvania, which has been devastated over the last couple of years. It was on a downturn anyway. Our population is fleeing, and that was happening before.
Yes.
We're losing a whole generation almost. But in order for us to try to get some of that back, we desperately need to encourage young people to come to Pennsylvania.
Right.
They're not coming if we don't have good jobs. We don't have places for them to go. If we don't have neighborhoods that are clean with parks and recreation, all those other things. But you know what? The number one thing is jobs. Bring your economy back, a tax structure. So we have to have predictability. I've said for almost a decade, predictability is somehow a dirty word in Pennsylvania. There's no predictability in permitting, in regulation, in taxation, in zoning, in code. Nothing is predictable. You can't count on anything.
Right.
We have lost billions of dollars of capital investment by other industries and manufacturing that want to come here. If we had an intelligent administration that was welcoming to business, we would lower the corporate net income tax, we would speed up the permitting process. I'm not talking about changing regulations and having dirty air. No. If you tell a company that they're going to get a DEP, Department of Economic Prevention, permit, then they, in 45 days, and it takes them a year, we got a problem.
Well, our permitting process statewide it leaves a lot to be desired. It's a problem, and and I have to believe that there's a compromise there. I mean, there's a way we can have the best of both worlds. I always believe that, and I think we have. You're exactly right, and we have some brilliant people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I can't believe that we can't get these minds, these great minds that we have, at the table, okay, and have an intelligent, meaningful conversation and come up with that compromise and collaborate together. It doesn't, and I don't even care about party. I don't care about any of that stuff. We can do this.
We should be able to do it because other states can and have.
And they are.
Right, and they are. And they're taking our capital investment that want to be here. Perfect example of losing brain trust and capital investment, Intel. Just recently, they wanted to come to Pennsylvania and build a factory and produce these processors that we desperately need to be made in America, right? Because when China invades Taiwan, which I think is inevitable, maybe sooner than later.
Yep, I agree.
All of these things that we rely on for so many things, I mean, just our cars, our trucks, all sorts of things, we absolutely need those. They're being produced in Taiwan. We need to have them here.
Yes.
And we could have had them in Pennsylvania. But because our regulation system, because our permitting process, because it's impossible to get anything done here.
Right.
They moved to Ohio. We lost thousands of jobs, hundreds of millions of dollars in capital investment, and it happens every month, just about. It's just over and over and over again.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, think about what's it been since you and I first started talking about the EcoFlex product. Because
Yes.
you remember, that's been a year.
I know.
Right? So we had you come out to Allenport. We've kind of centered on that site, and we're looking at a couple of sites. But so we started this process over a year ago, and you've been involved with us from day one. We just finally got our product approval from Penndot. So we're approved. We're now able to be bid and and all those things. We'll be in Pub 15, so everything's approved. But the point, that's 150 jobs. It's nowhere near in comparison, but it's 150 good family-sustaining jobs, right?
Yes.
Here in the Mon Valley, where we need them, in your district where we need them. And while we were in that process, the company was able to get approval, permitted, and built a facility in Texas.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? We started out to be the first one in the U.S., but we're going to be second, which is good because they're committed to Pennsylvania. But this is, and we've talked about this is local jobs, locally sourced raw materials product, completely 100% green. I mean, it checks every single box.
Yeah, and more, because it's getting rid of a horrible problem, tires.
Exactly,
Exactly. Now they can be built and shredded and put into to sound barrier walls everywhere.
Right, and that could wind up being upwards of 300-400 jobs because we're going to use Pennsylvania as a hub for manufacturing distribution. But in that time, and it's not because of anything other than the processes that are in place. Everybody that we dealt with from the secretary level on down through staff was completely and totally engaged, really recognized the importance of the product and was 100% on board, but we couldn't swim through that red tape faster.
Exactly. It's molasses.
Exactly.
It is. It's just so much. It really is. And it's just bureaucratic nonsense. And, God bless some of these folks, that are working in a lot of these different departments and things. They've got to justify their existence somehow. Mm-hmm. Well, if I just slide these permits through, that are okay, well, what,
right.
Am I necessary? I got to make a mark here. I got to make a mark there. I got to do. Well,
Sure.
Don't re-engineer through permitting. Don't legislate through permitting. That's not your job.
Right.
And you can have a company go to Louisiana or Texas or anywhere. Louisiana is really interesting. You can get a gas and oil company to go down there and they want to maybe do some drilling somewhere. They can literally get a cup of coffee, sit down, and wait for their permit to be processed. Okay, well, I
did a lot of work in Louisiana.
Oh, there you go.
It's very true.
It's a whole other country.
It's 100% true.
Yeah. But here in Pennsylvania, it's like, oh, well, that'll be 18, 24 months. Who's going to sit on their capital investment that long?
That's
and I don't care if you
right.
want to build an LA Fitness somewhere. You've got to get, and rightly so, you need to be sure that
Absolutely.
when you're leveling a property, you're not going to have runoff and it's going to go into a creek or stream that's going to affect this, that, the other thing. Totally get it. But, this stuff's been going on for a couple hundred years.
That's exactly right.
And there are people who are engineers who specialize in these kinds of
Yes,
things.
you're
And they've
exactly
been
right.
doing this for decades very well without the sky falling and without destroying someone's waterway. So let's give those folks brownie points, put them on the good
Exactly
list,
right.
and the
That's
ones that mess up, they go on the naughty list. And
Yeah.
these people get scrutinized very heavily. The other ones stop being a proctologist and give them a permit.
I have been in that business for 40 years. So I've lived my entire career. I'm not an engineer by training, but I've been in the engineering business, construction for years. And I know how difficult it is. And I have never in all that time ever heard anybody, whether it's an engineer, a developer, an elected official, say, let's try to circumvent the process.
No.
It's always been, let's improve the process.
Yes.
And there's nothing
Help
wrong
me
with that.
help you.
Yes, that's exactly right. We should be looking to improve every process. We should be looking to get better as we go along and as we learn and as technology develops, as you said. We should apply that technology in those new processes to improve what we have.
Well, baby steps, Jim, because one of the things that did sort of improve, when I first took office again in 2014, one of my first meetings was with the Secretary of DEP, and this was a different guy at the time who's since resigned, shamefully. But anyway, the next one, great guy, worked with him very well. I would call him every 6 to 8 weeks and either have an in-face, person-to-person meeting or a telephone call. And I would say, okay, here are the projects that we're working on in my district. These are the people involved. Here are the engineers. This is when can we meet with you and people in DEP?
Right.
I would do the same thing with Penndot.
Sure.
Because they keep telling you, well, if they let us know ahead of time, then we can sort of ward off any mistakes. Fine, let's have a meeting. I'll bring donuts. Let's do
That's
it.
exactly.
And you sit down with them and you look them in the eye and say, okay, this is what we're planning. This is what we're going to do. And these are the documents and this is what we need. Okay. And the next step. I remember, the Kochberg Dam, God bless them, down there, they were having such a hard time. The thing was collapsing and all these other things. Will Tolmeyer, who used to work in my office, he had
Great
a
kid.
standing call it was a conference call with our DEP folks, the Kochberg Dam folks, and Will, and they're all on a conference call. I think of like every 2 weeks for a while.
Yeah.
Just to try to get the ball rolling and keep moving forward. And there was a lot of miscommunication.
Sure there
because
was.
God bless some of these folks in some small municipalities. They don't speak engineer.
Right.
They don't.
Right.
So if you can do a little hand holding and
That's
walk them
exactly
through
right.
it, you can
And not
move forward.
all of them
with
even
it.
have access to an engineer.
No, of course not.
We've
No.
represented small communities for a long time, and I joke that if I had been paid for all of the engineering advice I've given communities in the Mon Valley, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be retired. it's a difficult thing I mean, I'm familiar with the Kochberg Dam issue, right? But, you know, and Kochberg's a really cool little community. And, you know, yeah, wonderful people. But, you know, not everybody can go out and grab an engineer or even a solicitor or anything like that. And some of these communities struggle and bad decisions are made because decisions had to be made, you know. So,
Well, and some of these places have dams that were there 100 years ago.
Right.
And through no fault of their own, they're stuck with this. Like, well, we
Right.
can't afford to do this, and we can't afford insurance because what if it collapses? And you know, a lot of things along the way. You know, it takes a lot of work. And
does.
I'll tell you what, my hat's off to these people who take on any municipal kind of job, a borough council member, anything like that. God bless them.
I absolutely have so much respect for, because I've dealt with them for my entire career, and my stepdaughter just recently joined North Bell Vernon Borough Council, right? And she decided that, you know, she had that civic duty, which just kept pulling, and someone resigned, and she put her name in, and it's been an eye-opening experience, but she has really started to really have a renewed respect for people that do what you do, not only at your level, but also down at basically street level. Right?
Exactly. You know, and all politics is local.
Right,
And
you're exactly right.
It's not easy. It's a lot of responsibility. And again, anybody who wants to jump into that and try to do the best they possibly can and give their time and talent to their community to try to help them out, God bless them.
Before we go, and I want to touch on one thing, if you're okay with it. I'd like to talk about infrastructure because that's something that's near and dear to my heart, right? I started out my career in transportation doing roads and bridges, but for about the last 30 years, it's been water, wastewater, stormwater, municipal government, right? So everybody knows about the infrastructure bill, and I don't even think the letters off the top of my head. I'm having a senior moment. But anyway.
Is it ARPA? No, that's a different one.
That's a different one.
No,
But
no,
anyway, so the infrastructure bill,
that.
it's out there, and so there's a lot of chatter, discussion, talk, complaint, whatever you want to frame it as, that none of that money that comes to Pennsylvania is going to get to here, to the Mennesons and Shawrays and Denoras of the world, right? I disagree with that. I think that it's going to go to the street. It's going to come down to that level, to that local community level. But I just want to see, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, what do you see as the path to that?
Well, I think that you need to contact your legislators and, you know, go up the food chain and say, okay, this is so much money that's being given to the state. Mm-hmm. What are your plans with it? Where's it going to go? What projects are the priority? How much money is going to be distributed per county? Is it per capita? Is it per county? Is it per what? Right. You know, the age of things in need in different areas. And I know that a lot of the infrastructure money that came to Washington County, and this was something that was just kind of, and this is different than the infrastructure bill. So first CARES money that came out,
right.
There was $13 million in Washington County. They were told, okay, you got 7 months to complete a project, and here's $13 million. And if you don't have your broadband done in 6 months, then you don't get to keep it. Right. Well, for Pete's sake, if you don't have any infrastructure done at all, as you just explained, right. It takes a long time just to get anything going. So there was $13 million, and they were scrambling like mad to do anything with this money, broadband related. But the parameters were so ridiculous and so prohibitive that they couldn't use it. And that is not just Washington County, that's multiple counties across all of Pennsylvania. Everywhere, every state had a problem.
Absolutely.
But as far as infrastructure goes, I think because Pennsylvania is in such dire need of infrastructure improvements. I mean, we just saw a bridge fall down.
Exactly.
And I mean,
and
it
the
happens
scary
a
thing
lot.
is I've seen worse bridges.
Yeah, that is a scary thing.
And that's a frightening.
Me too.
That's a frightening thought. You
It
know,
is.
and I think we're a little bit unique here in the fact that we have a lot of small communities. We have a lot of older small communities. Washington County is a great example. And this is I've worked all over the country, and this is the uniqueness of southwestern Pennsylvania. Washington County has 67 municipalities. Okay? 66 or 67 communities.
It's as many counties as in Pennsylvania.
Right. So that's boroughs, townships, cities. Mm-hmm. So serving those 67 communities, there are 30 municipal authorities, 30 public utilities. Okay? That's crazy. And it's inefficient, and it's environmentally unsafe, and all of this, because a lot of those, the majority of those small utilities, they can't afford to check every single box. They do their best. They give everything that they possibly can, but there's only so much of a rate base. There's only so many things that they can do. They only have so much available to pay for, staff and for training those things. And that is something that I personally would like to see money from this infrastructure bill, if it's in there. And again, I haven't dug into it to the extent where if there was any way we could pull some out for studies, right? What's the feasibility of that? And what would be the feasibility of consolidation? Not municipal consolidation, but of the utilities. Sure. Maybe we only need for those 67 communities 10 utilities or 15, right? So those are the kind of things I think that we really need to dig into to get really to the true big picture of all.
Right. And again, grants are out there for feasibility studies so that you don't have to dip into your infrastructure funds.
Right.
So I think that's an excellent way of doing it. And again, we've been doing something like that along the way in my office for 7 years on different levels.
Right.
Like, okay, hey, here are 5 municipalities, and you have 2 different police departments, and you're overlapping and all that.
Right.
Here's a survey that you could do. If you want to, it's free. Take this survey, do this study or whatever, and we'll determine if it's best that you have a municipal police department. Because right now, we're talking about infrastructure, right? Act 89, which was the gas tax. I mean, we are paying, I think it's 58 cents a gallon, a tax on our gas in Pennsylvania, the highest gas tax in America. It's insane. On top, I mean, I just saw a sign, I think it was this morning, $5.19 for unleaded. I'm like, what country am I in?
It's crazy.
But our gas tax is through the roof, and that money was supposed to pay for infrastructure. However, for years and years now, hundreds of millions of dollars of that has been taken out of infrastructure and put into a state police motor fund. Okay, well then it was like, oh, hold on, let's figure out a different way to fund our state police. Because so many municipalities, like I said, they don't have their own police department.
Right.
And they're like, we'll just call the state police. Well, it'll be 2 hours before they get to you.
That's
So
exactly right.
There's that.
That is exactly right.
But yet, there was an option presented. Okay, how about $25 per capita per year? $25 a year per capita for areas that are relying on state police and don't have their own. Well, I mean, you're helping to pay for the troopers, their training, their cars, their gas, all of those things. So, you're not taking your tax dollars from your municipality and paying for your own police department. So chip in and pay for state police. There's a lot of people saying, I pay taxes every year. Why would I have to pay for that? So it's just, okay, do you want money to go back into the infrastructure and, not have bridges fall down? But again, I think there's a ton of money that's absolutely being flushed, in the Turnpike Commission, in, Penndot, in all of these things. And their option, their brilliant idea, sarcasm, to toll 9 bridges around.
I'm
it's
just
absurd.
dumbfounded by that.
It's literally a $1,200 a year tax on people who are just going back and forth to work.
And
That's a lot of money.
All the bridges are locally that they're talking about, I use all of them. All of them, every single one. I probably go, it's like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, you should donate a pint of blood every time you go back.
Right. And I was just out in New York, New York City metro area, and I've seen they toll every bridge. I mean, it's like crazy. One was like $1. I mean, and I'm hit because I use my Easy Pass, right? And so I went back and looked, and there's 1,000 tolls on it. I'm like, bridge tolls. You know, it makes no sense. But,
But I mean, for the 9 bridges they're proposing in Pennsylvania, for crying out loud, when they proposed it, they hadn't even done a diversionary study yet, which means, okay, let's do a study. If we toll this bridge X number of dollars, what's going to happen to the traffic? They're going to go
Right.
around it, okay? I mean, I have Waze, you know,
Sure.
the app that tells
Yeah,
you,
right,
and even
right.
Google Map. A navigation system will tell you, well, if you go this route, you're going to $4.25 in tolls. I'm going to go around it.
Go around it. And there's always there's an option that says no tolls.
That's
There's
right.
always an option.
Every
that says
single
no
one of
tolls.
them. So what do you think these big trucks are going to be doing? These truckers who are literally selling their kidney to pay for gas these days. They're
Right.
gonna be charged tolls now, $1,200 a year just to go back and forth a couple times.
It's crazy.
It's ludicrous. Just stop it already. You know, let's find another way. Let's find a different way.
Sure.
We can do this. You can put an HOV lane in there. You can do this. There's a list like this of different options that were proposed
Absolutely.
by Senator Wayne Langerhulk. He's the chair of transportation. He had a long list of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, and now with all this billions of dollars of infrastructure funding, we said, oh, good, now you don't have to toll the bridges. Like, no, we're going to anyway. Like, why? What are you doing? They're never
One of the
happy.
things that I love about you, that I will always love about you, is
I'm so
that
shy.
Yes, you're just this demure, shy little thing.
I'm
You sit
sorry.
in the corner. You never shy away from any issue. And I knew that there wasn't anything that I could throw at you in this conversation that you couldn't handle. And I will tell you, again.
Is that all you got? What do you-
Exactly. See, I'm so happy we had a chance to do this.
Me
I
too.
have tremendous respect for you, and I want you to keep doing what you're doing. We need you, and I appreciate your service and your friendship. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Thanks. And I hope you have me back again.
Absolutely, because we have to. We haven't done it all. We still have to have
right.
episode 2.
Hey, we didn't even
So-
talk about the Love Boat.
Exactly,
More to come.
Exactly. And cheers and all of those things. And I wanted to,
Oh, gosh, lit the fuse.
Yeah. And I mentioned your kids, and I didn't even get a chance to go there. But
okay.
now tell me, Devin is in New Orleans?
She is in New Orleans. She is the weekend evening anchor for CBS News in New Orleans.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and she
That is
loves
awesome.
it there. Just got married. Well, I officiated. Yeah.
And you
I was
married
the
her.
official. Yes, I did. I officiated their wedding
Very
in
cool.
10/10/2020, and then they had their celebration on their 1-year anniversary in New Orleans. Second
Nice.
line and all that stuff was a lot of fun. My son Dante, he is training to be a commercial pilot, not big jets, but like to teach
Sure,
private pilots.
sure.
He graduated Duquesne with international security degree, and again, pilot. He was a Marine reservist for a
Yep,
while.
I remember. Yeah.
Doing great stuff. He's engaged. They'll be getting married in 2023. I'm like, I get a year off. Thank you, God. But yeah, they're doing
Good
well.
stuff.
So thanks
Good
for asking.
stuff. No,
Appreciate
good
that.
stuff.
Yeah,
Well, thank you again.
This
and
was a lot of fun.
enjoy your weekend. This is great.
I will.